And we are live. I'm live, Emily.
Oh my goodness.
Just letting you know.
Great.
Hello, hello, and welcome to today's live stream extravaganza. Somehow I've set myself up to do this for an hour and a half today, just for you lovely people watching, or not watching, as it currently stands. My little ticker is saying, oh, one viewer. Welcome. Welcome. I'm going to guess it's Cornelia. We'll see though. Yeah, welcome to the live stream, where I'm going to do a bit of catching up today because I owe you 3 live streams. So this live stream is 3 times as long, and I'm going to start off by talking about the. Let's go back to the first episode. What? Apologies. Can you tell that I've prepared this extensively? What's the first episode I'm going to talk about today? I swear I made these. Yeah, I must have made them at some point. Being scared. I think that's the first one we're going to talk about. Oh, 5 people today. Woohoo! Look at that. The scheduling worked out well after all. Welcome, everyone. Says 2 watching on your end. Well, yeah, says 5 watching now, which is just delightful. Please do introduce yourself in the chat, because as much as I can chat through some of the stuff that went into making these episodes of Fun Science, and maybe talk a little bit about some stuff that didn't make it into the videos, that sort of thing, just sort of how they came together. I want you to get the most out of this as possible, so feel free to ask any questions at all, Fun Science related or other. It's up to you. I'm happy to take this time for you. But in the meantime, why don't I talk about the being scared episode? I'm going to start with that. What I've got into the habit of doing when I've done these live streams is essentially just pulling up the video on YouTube on my channel, scrubbing through it, and then just sort of talking about anything that occurs to me. I got some fresh new faces in the live stream today. It makes me happy. It is being scared. That's the one we're going to talk about. Being scared. 3 episodes we're going to talk about today. Why do we enjoy being scared? Why do we love fictional characters? And what is the power of a hug? So, why do we enjoy being scared? I'm trying to remember where this episode came from. I think initially I just came up with the idea because we were planning out the episodes quite far in advance, and we were thinking, oh, okay, maybe this one is going to, whatever this episode might be, it might drop somewhere around Halloween. What is the science of Halloween? No, that doesn't really work. But the science behind why we might enjoy being scared, that seemed like an interesting enough question that it was worth looking into. I think I've been pretty lucky with this with these episodes so far. In the mostly I've been able to just kind of like think of a question that seems interesting and then just do a lot of research and then hopefully pick out the most interesting stuff. Talking about being scared and it's midnight there. Well, I'm not here to scare you, I promise. This is a safe place. So, why do we enjoy being scared? I feel like this is one of the earlier episodes I wrote as well. It's definitely one of the no, I don't think it was one of the earlier episodes we wrote, but it was definitely the first thing that we shot. Was the stuff with Shauna, who plays what's the character's name? Let me unmute this for a moment.
Vanessa Squeakerson asked.
Vanessa Squeakerson, because can't just name a character with a normal name. Got to give them a silly name. So all of the stuff that we filmed with Vanessa, where she's like in her space, kind of asking the question, why do we enjoy being scared? We film that here in my home. Everything else for this entire series was shot in the YouTube space in Toronto. This is the one thing where we didn't quite know how we were gonna. Well, there's actually some stuff that's shot right next to the YouTube space. When we did the episode on cuteness, that was shot in just like an area just next to it. But yeah, we shot this stuff at home on my camera as opposed to on YouTube's fancy cameras. And yeah, then I got to dress up as a caveman, remembering that. So the way that stuff worked when I'm kind of like talking about the caveman and how like the kind of like evolutionary speaking, why we need to be scared. Kind of wanted to start off kind of like relatively simple to be like, hey, there is science in all of this. Where there wasn't actually enough, so we've shot all of that stuff on green screen, obviously, but there wasn't really enough room for me and Julie, who played the other caveman, to be on screen at the same time. So we actually shot both parts of the caveman at different times, and then I just kind of stitched them together. And then there's that bit where, because my character, the caveman, is not necessarily scared of hearing a rustle in the bushes, therefore he, oh, Liz is watching. Hi, Liz. It's Emily's mum. Welcome, faithful patron supporter, Patreon. But what was I saying? Yes, so there is the bit where my character is attacked by the lion. And I just kind of assumed that we would have like, and I would like animate a lion's arm, like using After Effects or something to pull me out. In fact, I think I was thinking that, and then I heard that our production designer, Carly, was thinking about possibly making the arm, and then I remember writing into the script an animated arm just to kind of save her the trouble, but she did it anyway. So that was fun to suddenly appear and be like, oh, you actually have a lion's arm. That's great. So I had a real lion's arm to... Who played the lion's arm? Was that you, Emily?
Yeah.
Emily played the lion's arm. One of many roles. Oh yeah, and then I got to include the footage of me both skydiving and bungee jumping in this video. Emily's just off camera right now. I think just trying to look in and see what's happening.
I'm just trying to see if I'm going to be in the background.
You're not in the background. You can, if you walk immediately behind me, then you'll be in the background. Just wait. Yeah, you're okay?
Yeah.
All right, good. Both Emily and I have pretty much just woken up. But I'm just, I happen to also be on camera. Pardon? Apart from Emily, who's been out for ages because she is like super great at life. Liz, just letting you know. So I got to include the footage of me bungee jumping and skydiving this because I felt like that was all kind of like pretty relevant. And, you know, every now and then I'll go back and remove old videos of mine that I'm not necessarily like, I don't want them to be public anymore just because for whatever reason. And both the bungee jumping video and the skydiving video were a couple of those that are not up anymore. So I was like, hey, I still have the footage. Let's use a bit of that so that they can kind of live on through this like new video. Before I go on to talking about the next thing with that video, why don't we answer a question that's just popped up in the chat. Charlie, I've always wondered, how was it to get from a one-man show vlog to such a big production that it involves so many other people? Do you still have control over the content as you had before? So when it comes to kind of going from me just filming stuff by myself to filming stuff with other people, it's been a very slow transition that's happened, you know, dating back to when I might have done, like there was a sketch that I did on my YouTube channel called The Other Charlie, where it was kind of like the door in my office led to a parallel universe where there was an evil version of myself, and it was like turned into a little back and forth between me and the evil version of myself. And I remember with that, it was just enough, it was going to be enough work that I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it all by myself, so I just had one other person come in and help me. He was like helping me with all of the shooting, and he also was like played a stand-in for a bit as well. And I went from that of just like slowly inviting, like, oh, maybe we can just do this together. Like, it would be my video, but you could just like help me out. To when we made the Tea Chronicles, the first short film I made, that was maybe with like maybe 15 people, and that was the first time where I was like, oh my god, this is so many people. How am I gonna like keep control of all of this? I have to kind of like be in charge and all of that stuff. Um, but that was a long time ago. So I've gotten pretty used to the idea of having. I mean, when it comes to making stuff with more people, it's like, yeah, after a while you do just kind of get used to it. And ultimately I'm still in charge of fun science. I still write everything and I make sure everything, like, I get final approval on everything. But I also, you have to be willing to let other people kind of take charge as well and kind of know what your role is. Because with these more recent episodes of Fun Science, I didn't direct any of them, which was kind of new for me. When we decided to make like a kind of the initial run of kind of like a higher quality Fun Science series, that was around the release of my book, and I was in all of the episodes, but I was trying to direct all of the episodes as well, and it was just a bit too much to think about. And so we hired my friend Louise to direct these episodes of Fun Science, and she had watched the previous ones, and she got really a good sense of what we were going for. And it basically allowed me to kind of like, it was like, yeah, I was handing off control to her for making sure that everything that I was doing on camera was working and picking the shots and all of that stuff. And there's definitely a point where you have to kind of like, you have to accept that you are not necessarily always going to be equipped to make the best choices. Either you might need someone else who's just better than you at what you're doing to improve the overall quality, and it's not a case of just like thinking, oh, if I'm in control of everything, it's going to be best. Well, it's not. I mean, even just in the case of the Fun Science episodes, it's like my attention is divided. Like, I am thinking about all of the kind of like the acting or presenting that it is that I need to do. I'm trying to kind of like think about how that stuff is going to come together, and I can't necessarily stop and go back and watch the footage every time I've done a take. I need to have other people on the side to make sure that they can say, okay, we need to move on to the next thing. Or actually, you don't need to get this thing that you planned. And but yes, that thing you just did, that worked fine. That will be good. Let's move on. So it's definitely different, but it's there's no loss of control or anything like that. There's no one. It's because I'm still the author of everything. If there was even when it comes to kind of the sponsors involved in the videos, like, we have been lucky to have sponsors for the videos who just want to be there to. They just have that kind of like bumper right at the beginning of the episode. This episode is brought to you by, and then they have 30 minutes at the end where I talk about them. That stuff, I ran all through the brand, but when it came to the actual content in the videos, I had no say over any of that. So that's kind of that's being able to kind of like, if I was in a position where let's say a broadcaster for some reason had decided to buy Fun Science, that might be an instance where I would have someone to answer to, and I might get slightly less control. But as it is, I am in control. I feel like it was a very long answer to your question, but there you go.
Whose question?
That was from I want to say Lotinus. I might have said that wrong because I usually pronounce people's usernames and names wrong. But there we go.
Can I? Is my mom still there?
Yes, your mum is still there.
Can I say hi, Mom?
You can say hi to your mum.
Hi, Mom. Happy Sunday. Okay, I'm going away now.
Thank you. All right. As before, if you have any questions, feel free to answer. I'm really happy to I'm basically talking about the episode just because it's just something to do with the time. But I mean, I'm also willing to answer any questions that you do have. Let's go back to the fun science episode. So this was one episode that we shot some of it. Like there was basically one scene in the middle of the episode where the lights turn off and I kind of like see a scary figure in the distance and I get scared. That particular scene, like when we did our initial kind of like shoot for Fun Science, where we were like filming all of the episodes that we wanted to get, that one scene we didn't have enough time to film it, and so we just left it and assumed we would come back to do it later. And then we did film one more episode of Fun Science, which was the fictional characters episode. That wasn't one that we'd planned to make before. Basically what we did, oh, Liz just says that she's back. Oh, no, hi back. She's saying hi back to you, Emily.
Hi.
Okay, there you go. You guys have had your interaction. You can always text or call each other. You don't necessarily need to do it through my live stream, but I'm happy to oblige. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so all of that stuff in the dark we shot that later. And I was a little worried about it because I had a haircut in between those two, in between the two shoots, but I think I was more worried about that. So I think it's apparent if you're looking closely, because there's a scene where I'm sitting beside the computer, kind of like explaining all of that stuff about how if you know that you're safe, when you watch something scary, you're able to enjoy the sense of fear. You can see an image of me on the computer looking scared, and then me sitting next to the computer, and you can just about see that there's a difference in my hair. It's slightly shorter in one, so they were not shot at the same time, is what I'm saying. I also kind of want to talk a little bit about the scary mask that we got for this episode, which was a surprisingly complicated situation. I think we kind of just didn't get around to getting one in time, or it was just something that we thought would be easier than we'd realized. So I remember the day of the shoot, we still hadn't managed to find a scary mask for the scared episode. And so in a kind of a panic state, Emily took a long trip up to, I want to say, just like, quite a bit north of where we are, rented a car suddenly to like go up, and went to a costume party store and looked at the selection of masks, and they weren't very, very good. I think the one that Emily bought in the end was this like, it was like a skull mask that was also sort of like a pirate. And I was like, that's not really what I wanted, but we don't have enough time for anything else, so let's go for it. And so Emily bought that in a very stressful state. And then our production designer, Carly, I think she came around here to film the stuff with Shauna. And she was like, hey, my boyfriend had this mask and I brought it just in case. And that's ended up being the mask that we used. So there was a lot of stress in terms of getting the right mask. And in the end, we needn't have stressed, but that's kind of what happens when you're shooting something. It's like, we need this thing. And I guess lots of people were thinking about that in the end. But ultimately, it looked very scary. And so that worked out nicely. And then as well as being the lion's arm in the caveman section of this video, Emily also played the creepy lady with the mask on. And so double starring role for Emily in this episode. There you go. We would have had Shauna play that role, but like I said, we filmed that particular scene in the dark like weeks and weeks later. So Emily was happy to stand in. And I think that's the basics enough about this episode. Trying to rack my brains if there's anything else for that episode that didn't go in. Oh, there was one thing that I was wanted to see if I could get into the video, but ultimately didn't quite have enough time to fit it in. Was and this is something that people brought up in the comments of the video as well, is like, well, I don't get enjoyment out of being scared. Like, I just really don't enjoy it. And I think there was, every now and then with the Fun Science videos, there's like a section kind of like near the end, which I'd planned as just voiceover, and then sort of like usually with accompanying complicated graphics. and I usually don't have enough time to either do the graphics myself or even get someone else to do them. And so often it becomes an easier case of being like, okay, this little section here near the end of the video, it could add an extra wrinkle, an extra complication, like just a little bit more information, but it's not really necessary to the whole video. So I'm going to save myself all of the effort that it would go to make all of the accompanying graphics and just pull that section out. So there was a bit that I was going to talk about where I was going to do my best to explain why different people enjoy fear to different degrees. It's essentially, it's just a case of, to boil it down, it's just people's brains work in different ways. Different people's brains reabsorb, release and reabsorb the chemical dopamine in the brain to different degrees, and that essentially dictates how much fun you feel while you're doing something scary. And so there will be people who are just like biologically predisposed to experience more joy out of doing something scary than other people. And I think that ties into kind of like where the kind of like the natural thrill seeker might come from. The people who would be like, I want to go bungee jumping over and over again because it gives me the high, this natural high that I adore, versus other people who are just like, I just thought I was going to die. Why do people do that? Well, if you don't understand, that's just your brain. So there you go. I think that's everything about that video. I'm going to hang out for around 8 minutes before talking about the next video. So if you guys have any more questions about the why we enjoy being scared video, or just any other questions at all, feel free to pop them in the comments. Otherwise, I'll just ramble for 8 minutes to try and fill some time. And also give something for the people who are not watching live to watch later, because that is important to me too. The Bloodlight says, I don't enjoy getting scared, but I can't stop myself from reading scary stories or watching horror films. So you don't enjoy getting scared, but you still do it anyway. That's interesting. I feel like there must be something that that kind of might feed more into either you don't necessarily notice that you're enjoying it, could be a possibility, or it might kind of feed more into like there are other ideas about why we might not enjoy, but like want to seek out things that scare us, which is it kind of like it works as it works almost as like as practice, because it's not necessarily that, oh, I know I'm safe, therefore I can enjoy the fear, but it might be, I know I can experience what it might be like to have this sense of fear, but I know I'm safe, so I don't actually have to kind of like, I'm not putting myself in any danger, but I'm still kind of like helping myself to imagine what it might be like, which might help me more if I'm in a like real life or death situation. So maybe that's part of why you still experience those scary things, even if you don't feel like you enjoy them. Was the season based on the questions submitted on that survey you did last year, I think? So yeah, way back when Emily and I put together a little survey where we were basically just asking people what they might want to see in Fun Science episodes, and definitely some of these episodes are based off of people's questions. I can't remember which ones. I think because some of them just came from Emily. I think the music one was definitely one that came from a suggestion that someone left. The one about artificial intelligence might have been, but I can't quite remember. That was kind of more, if someone had suggested that, I think that was what I was kind of planning on doing anyway. I think someone did just say Mars. So the episode about Mars did just come from someone being like, Mars? And I think what makes something cute and what is the power of a hug, I think both of those came out of conversations that I had with Emily. and why do we enjoy being scared as well? I think those were just like kind of naturally occurring ideas. Why do we love fictional characters? That idea came kind of late in the game, because that was the one episode that we shot after all of the other ones. It's a little confusing, but the most recent episode is not the most recent episode that came out. What is the Power of a Hug is not the most recent episode that we shot. We actually shot that one before we shot the Why Do We Love Fictional Characters one. It's confusing. It was just sort of a complicated way of kind of like what we'd agreed to in terms of like space with advertisers and like when those episodes would come out. Just kind of boring stuff like that. But why do we love fictional characters? This is this idea came out of a very odd place. I guess that's the next episode we're going to talk about, though. So I'll talk about that story in a moment. Or I could just talk about it now because I realize I don't have anything else to say. I might read out what you've just said here. Not topic related, but I wanted to say I don't know you personally, but having been a subscriber for a long time, I felt so proud seeing your book at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum in DC. Yeah, that's I feel like, I mean, I did see a photo of that. It's possible that you were the person who sent me that. If that is the case, I'm sorry for not knowing for sure. But that is that's pretty cool. I've seen my book appear in some science museums and things like that as well. I mean, it's always weird whenever I see my book, just like in any physical bookstore at all, because you're just like, oh yeah, that's a thing I did. Would you try and tackle more complicated issues like quantum mechanics? I really loved what you did with dark matter / energy or gravitational waves. You made everything sound so simple. I think I would like to do more of that stuff in future episodes of Fun Science. With these more recent episodes, I think we were trying to kind of look at more of the science of kind of more everyday questions, I guess. Yeah, I do kind of miss talking about the kind of more complex stuff. I mean, the reason the gravitational waves video came together more than anything was because it was a topic that was complicated enough for me that I wanted to do a lot of research into it just to understand it, and then I kind of had enough stuff to turn that into a video. Whether I would talk about quantum mechanics, I don't know. I might try and talk about an aspect of that maybe, or just kind of do like, it would probably have to be quite like a basic introduction to it, because that stuff is very hard to understand. It's really a case of if you think you understand it, then you probably don't. It's quite difficult, but that's not a reason to not give it a go. Alrighty, we're almost at our first half hour, so why don't I talk about the next episode of Fun Science that we're going to talk about today, which is why do we love fictional characters? Will you do more episodes of Fun Science with topics you included on your book? I don't know necessarily. It's possible. I remember when we did the first run of episodes of Fun Science that came out with the book at the same time. It almost felt like cheating to take too much stuff out of just sort of directly from the book and just turn that into YouTube videos. So I remember the topics for those episodes were more like, oh hey, here's some stuff that I couldn't include in the book because it was like too much information, or because it just didn't fit. Like, there's interesting stuff, but it just kind of like was kind of too much of a kind of like a tangent. No worries. Sorry, double text message. I'm on Do Not Disturb now. Promise, got my full attention. But I might look back to the book to see if that stuff might inspire me a little bit more. So, why do we love fictional characters? So, like I said, this is the most recent episode that we shot. Came together through collaboration with the charity Plan International Canada and their program, which is Spread the Net, which is all about getting malaria nets to people in need. So I'm very like it was like obviously being able to be like, hey, this episode is brought to you by a charity that does a really nice thing, as opposed to this episode is brought to you by a company that has a product. It's kind of nicer. Not that I have anything against flogging Squarespace, which because it's great, and Skillshare as well, both of them are. But it's kind of comes with an extra little thing of just like, oh, kind of hoping to do something good in the world. And so this video kind of like accompanies a different video that I made for Plan International Canada, which is about the science behind malaria and about malaria, like about mosquito nets and that sort of thing. So basically, that kind of collaboration came together as a thing, and we'd already shot the rest of the episodes of Fun Science, but we wanted to make something work with them, so we booked in another shooting day, which is how this stuff came together. And the topic of the video kind of came out of a need to figure out how to make an episode of Fun Science, knowing that we didn't have the set that we originally had when we shot the initial episodes of Fun Science in the YouTube space in Toronto. Because the background that you see in all of the episodes it was like a partly like it was basically a set that they had built to celebrate Canada Day, if I'm remembering rightly. So they had lots of different kind of corners where you could have like different setups, and we kind of like picked one of the corners and like redecorated it to look like it similar basically to the space that we used back when we shot the original 5 episodes of Fun Science back in London. So we kind of like readjusted the whole thing and made it look kind of nice and pretty until we were happy with it. And then when we came back to film this episode of Fun Science, this extra one, that set didn't exist anymore. They turned it into a metro station complete with a train, and it looked incredibly different. And so my challenge, and we only were filming for one day, so we booked one of the studios, which is the green screen studio / black box studio that they have there. And so the challenge was, okay, we're not going to be able to shoot on the normal set. How do we make an episode? In my mind, anyway, this challenge I gave myself, like, how can I make an episode that fits with the theme of only having a green screen to work with? Or just like a set that looks very obviously like a film set. And that's when I kind of stumbled across the idea of doing something about basically how we see media, essentially. So that's why this episode starts with me on a green screen where it looks like I'm on the normal set, and then I reveal, hey, no, I'm just actually on a green screen, because your brain can't tell the difference between what's real and what's fiction. It's odd sometimes that whole ideas for episodes will come from just like, here is a production challenge, and I don't want to just pretend. I don't want to just shoot the whole thing on green screen and just pretend I'm in the actual set. I mean, ultimately, I think it looks pretty good, but it's still like you don't know necessarily that it's going to look that good when you are just sort of planning an episode. You worry that, oh, it's going to look a bit funny with me on a green screen this whole time. So let's lean into that. And that's why all of the pieces to camera in this episode as well take place in that film set sort of like location. So yeah, that's where the idea for the episode came from. Odd. I don't know if I was the person who sent you the photo of the book at the museum. I don't remember. I do have a photo of it though. Well, someone must have sent it to me, because I definitely did see it and made me happy to see that. So yeah, what else is in this episode? I've got the dot that I animated through a maze, which was something that I was worried was going to be a bit too complicated, but I did figure out how to do it just by myself. Oh yeah, and then we have so one of the things I tried to do with the Fun Science episodes when I can is like, you can go two ways. Sometimes it can lean into just like, here is a fun and interesting fact that you might not know. Isn't that a cool fact? And then other times, you know, you want to talk about the science, about like where that fact actually came from, what the experiment might have looked like, and then so that's what I did in this episode, of kind of like leaning into that and just being like, okay, let's talk about this experiment where people reacted to affection towards a robot, an inanimate object, bless you, and a human being. So that was quite fun to put together. We had that adorable little robot dog that was actually supremely fun. I feel like we got quite a lot of footage of me just playing with that. Like it's on screen for what, like 5 seconds, and I feel like we probably got like 3 minutes of footage of me just playing with that dog, because that's what happens. And then also this episode features a cameo by I've forgotten his name. He is the production designer's boyfriend. It's the guy with the mustache. I don't think I actually credited him in this episode, which is bad of me. But it was one of those things where we were like, okay, we need a human being to be pet, and he looks great. He almost looks like I've taken kind of like a stock video or something of just like a great looking human being. But he was actually there doing his due diligence and just looking kind of just like confused by what's going on, and it was great. Oh yeah, and then we have this all of the stuff with the night in this episode, and like zooming into my brain. I don't know if it comes across in the episode itself, but you can actually see that there's the book that I'm reading, which is called A Very Absorbing Book. That I scripted. I was like, I just want Charlie to be reading a very absorbing book. But it's actually written by renowned author Lord Gideon, which is one of Carly's touches, production designer's touches, which I liked. I have the dust. She just made the dust cover and then just put it around a regular book, and I have the cover somewhere. I won't look it up now, but I wanted to keep hold of that because I thought it was quite fun. And then there's, well, yeah, when I'm playing the knight, that costume, I think the knight armor that I'm wearing in this episode is actually like I think it's a child's costume. I think it did come with a crown, but it was too small to fit on my head, so we went without the crown. And that's why I added the line, because originally it was just that the knight had body image issues. Just like sometimes I worry my armor makes me look fat, and I just changed it on the fly to my tiny armor, because the armor was tiny, because it was meant for children. But all of that stuff was fun. Like one of the things that happens like when I'm making these episodes of Fun Science is like, you know, as much as I feel equipped to do all of the stuff where it is just kind of like me just talking to camera and just like presenting the science and the kind of like the character that I'm used to being, you know, based on my own personality and persona. I do have a lot of fun when I get to just be just like something completely different. It comes back to my kind of like my theater days almost, right? Of just like I could never really play naturalistic characters as well as I could play just characters that were just like quite bombastic and very different from myself. So, and this is also an episode that it doesn't necessarily have anyone other than me in it. Like we didn't kind of like look for other YouTubers, for example, to come in and be in the episode, which we had done with all of the previous ones. And so I think we were like hoping that maybe someone would come in and play the knight, but I was always there as like as a backup to play the knight myself. And yeah, just saying, I had a lot of fun. That's all. And that's essentially how the video came together. Was there anything else that we could have included that we didn't? Not really. There was, as I said before, like with the previous episode, I think there was a section where I was like, there was a study that I was possibly talking about I was possibly going to include, and I recorded the voiceover for it, but again, it was going to require making lots of graphics and things, and so I ultimately decided to cut it out just for time purposes because it wasn't that relevant. But it was about a study in which people read a fiction book about a Muslim woman living in New York City, and about how having read that fiction book, as opposed to having read a non-fiction piece, would make you slightly less biased towards noticing whether or not a face was Caucasian or not. It was quite specific, and it was a little bit hard to explain. Ultimately, it was interesting, but it said pretty much the same thing as when I was talking about how if you find yourself losing yourself in a story about a fictional character that you initially might identify with, but whom is later revealed to be of different sexual orientation to yourself, that makes you less likely to stereotype against those people, or less biased. And so basically kind of said pretty much the same thing, so that's why that section disappeared. The takeaway, I guess, for you guys is that they've done lots of studies on this sort of thing about how stories can affect how you see the world. And it's I mean, as someone who wants to write fiction as well as working on these fun science videos more recently, it does make you think a lot about what the responsibility is of people writing fiction to tell stories about different types of people. It's like, it's not necessarily something you do just because you feel like you want, not even just because you want to raise up the voices of those people who wouldn't otherwise get to have their stories told, or just kind of like it is definitely not because that's just kind of like the politically correct thing to do. It's like, oh, actually, if you tell a good story about different types of people, that has like an impact on how people in the real world see those types of people. Like, oh, it kind of makes sense as like an obvious thing, but it's fun to be like, actually, that's backed up by science as well. So yeah, I felt like it's a responsibility that I think about now, and I wish that was kind of like a more prevalent way of thinking about stuff. But anyway, yeah, I think that's kind of it for this video. I can talk a little bit about the video I made for Plan as well, if you'd like me to, seeing as that one's kind of connected. But as before, if you guys have any questions about this episode of Fun Science, then I'm happy to answer them. Or just any questions at all, generally, about anything. I could talk about just my cat if you want. I could just show you my cat as well. That's always fun. He's currently just sitting on the windowsill across from me, looking very proud and quite happy. He's quite a happy little guy here in Canada. I could talk about the weather. I think it's 1 degree here today. It's 1 degree outside.
Why don't you talk about some of the things you've been enjoying recently in life?
Some of the things I've been enjoying recently in life. You are a very quiet lot. It's not a problem I have at all. But feel free to be brave. Put a question out there. It doesn't have to be an interesting question or a good question. It's my responsibility to be interesting for you. I love your cat. Mine is 8 years old. That's great. Gideon is, I think, 3 right now. We have just great listeners. I appreciate it. I mean, I honestly, because you guys weren't talking in the chat, I kind of had to keep on going and checking back to the live stream, and I was like, is everyone still here? Yep, exactly the same number of people as before. So you guys are listening very intently. I like it a lot. You're still here. Am I going to pick up Gideon and bring him over? Maybe not. Are you writing secret messages to me?
I'm writing things I've been enjoying in my life recently.
Emily has written me a list of things that I am enjoying in my life recently. Let's see what we've got here. Harry Potter's.
Did I write it nice?
You write an S. Harry Potter's.
Oh.
This is true. I recently got the urge. So back up a little bit. I was on a podcast recently called Mischief Managed, which is a Harry Potter themed podcast where we talked at length about house elves and the ethics of house elves, what the house elves mean, what they might be an analogy for. We went very deep. It was very interesting, and it gave me the bug to read Harry Potter again. I just finished reading. Well, this is kind of odd for me because I just finished reading Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, which is not a book I have ever read. I have only read Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, so it's odd reading it and being like, why did they keep on calling it the Sorcerer's Stone? There was even a point in the book where I noticed that they referred to Harry's bangs, and I was like, that's not a thing. Harry doesn't have bangs. Harry has a fringe.
What's special about the book?
Oh, I mean, you can come in and talk. I feel like you want to talk at the moment, Emily. Yeah, Gideon might not appreciate being picked up just to be showed off. I think if he wanders by and he's like looking for attention, maybe I'll just lift him up for a moment just to show him. He's not a cat who likes being picked up, but he can handle it for like 2 or 3 seconds, just so you guys can see him. Huh? The book inscription. Do you want to go get the book? So I was wanting to read Harry Potter, basically, and so I was about to download it on my phone because I didn't realize we had a copy here, which was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, which is the very same copy that is Emily's first copy of Harry Potter.
Your mom's still there?
I don't know if your mom's still here or not.
Okay, so here it is.
Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone.
Well loved. And on the inside, it says, "To Emily on your 10th birthday, love, Mom and Dad, 1999.
I read that and it made my heart flutter. And you were like, "This is an heirloom." And so when I was reading it, I was very careful to only like open it that much. I never could have like stretched the book out at all fully. I was like, I will just read it like this because I'm too afraid. And I think it is in exactly the same condition as it was the last time when I picked it up initially. So that's one thing I'm enjoying at the moment is Harry Potter. Jotalina says, "Hi, Emily."
Who?
Jotalina.
Oh, hi.
What else have I been enjoying recently, according to Emily? Trivia. I've been enjoying trivia. Do you mean the HQ app or something else?
Just like generally.
Generally, I've been enjoying trivia. I don't know that I'm necessarily that good at trivia. I mean, I don't even know if... I guess you could say that you're good at trivia, but it's like... I don't know. I don't feel like I'm particularly knowledgeable. I feel like when I try and do trivia here, especially, there are like lots of gaps in my knowledge. Like whenever any TV show or celebrity is mentioned that didn't make their way to the United Kingdom, I'm just like, I don't know what this is at all. I've enjoyed walking around Toronto. It's true. I've been going on lots of walks recently. And the Santa Claus parade I saw recently as well. I don't know if that's necessarily something I could say that I have been enjoying recently. The Santa Claus parade. I don't know if I'd ever seen a parade before, but they have the Santa Claus parade here in Toronto. The original, the first Santa Claus parade. Apparently, there is one other that is bigger, but this is the first, the second biggest in the world, and the first one. Have you guys been to parades before? They're very odd. Like when I first heard that there was a Santa Claus parade, I assumed it would just be lots of people dressed up as Santa, and then the real Santa would be there, obviously, hopefully. They did manage to get the real Santa for this Santa Claus parade. He was like right at the very end. There was lots of Christmas stuff there for sure. There's also a lot of like, I assumed that it would all be kind of like filled with like just Christmassy things, But like there were just like people like, here are 7 people dressed up as chickens. Here are 12 people dressed up as clowns with big cookies. Oh, there they are, parading. I mean, those kind of things were in between. Like, here's a marching band who are quite impressive. But isn't it a little early for a Santa Claus parade? It's still November. Yeah, and this was like a couple of weeks ago. But I guess that's just when they decide to have it here, you know. And they are the original, so you just gotta sort of like let them do what they seem to know what they're up to anyway. I still buy books, but I mostly read them on my phone. I'm just too afraid to destroy them by carrying them everywhere. I don't mind scuffing up my books at all, personally. I do sometimes still read books on my phone, but that's more for convenience than anything else. I will say that I don't really like hardback books. This is something I've realized about myself. I just don't like having to hold something heavy. I guess I like being able to bend the book as I'm reading it. This is one of the main reasons that although I should have, I still haven't read John Green's new book because it's only available on hardback. I will probably wait until I can get a paperback copy of it, just because that's just how I like to read. So yeah, the Santa Claus parade. Very strange to me. Very odd thing to witness.
You enjoyed it.
I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it. I was kind of like surprised by how absorbed I became in it. And some of it was quite impressive. And then there was also like there are the floats that are like sponsored floats. Like there's a pizza brand here, pizza chain called Pizza, and so there was the Pizza float, which I believe was it characters from Alice in Wonderland all eating pizza together? Just that sort of thing. You're just like, I don't really understand why this is here. What is it doing? You like coming into something like that with, I guess, my expectations of what I assumed a Christmas parade would look like. I guess I just got it pretty wrong. But that was a new cultural experience that I had. I wasn't expecting it to be like that at all. But yeah. Anyway, fun science or something. Let me see if there's anything else in this episode that I could talk about. What did we do? We talked about the set, how that stuff came together. I didn't really talk too much. Oh, you're saying that you read the audiobook of Fun Science. The only thing about hardcovers, don't read them when you're sleepy. They really hurt when you hit your face. You just mentioned the audiobook of Fun Science, which I haven't listened to fully. Obviously, I did the whole thing. Like I'm in mixed minds about audiobooks. Like I listen to a lot of podcasts. So I don't know if it's just like I never really feel like I have the time to just like give up on all of the podcasts that I've been listening to and just listen to an audiobook for a while, especially because they're quite long. But when I was recording the audiobook for Fun Science, I had a lot of fun doing that, like a lot of fun. I think it was like, and also I kind of like added kind of like addendums to things as I was going through every now and then. So there's definitely stuff in the audiobook that is not in the physical copy of the book. But then there's also in the physical copy, there's all of the illustrations and stuff. So I hope that they're as good as each other in different ways. But I appreciate that you listen to the audiobook anyway. But yeah, hardcovers. I just don't get it. My book is a hardcover. I should mention that up front, but it's quite a squidgy one. Like that's one of the things I like about it, is it's not like it's not kind of, it's still quite like comfy to hold. It's those ones where it's like it's really like thick and big, and then you've got like the dust cover and everything. It's just kind of like a bit cumbersome, I guess. Very I don't know what that makes me in terms of my book. There is indeed an audiobook of Fun Science. You can get it on Audible. I actually recorded the audiobook for Fun Science in the UK Audible offices, of all places. It took me 2.5 days to do the whole thing. It's very exhausting doing an audiobook. It's similar to this, where you're just sort of like talking a lot, but obviously when you're reading an audiobook, like you are also kind of like presenting at the same time. It's kind of like it's a little bit like what it's like to present in like an episode of Fun Science, really, but instead of you have to get out, 3 or 4 minutes of presenting time, often less than that. It's like, oh, you got to do it for 5 hours worth of just you talking, and there's nothing else to do, right? There's no like on a film set or something like that. It's okay, we've got this stuff. Let's and now I'm waiting for like lights to be moved around and camera to change, and we've got to like do a costume reset. There's all of these little breaks in between. Whereas when you're doing an audiobook, it's just, okay, you finish that bit, now immediately talk more. The breaks you get are the ones that you like give yourself, but then you're always just like, okay, we've only got like 3 more hours to do it. I guess I just have to go back into it. I really killed my voice doing the audiobook as well. I had to drink a lot of ginger tea, a lot of it, ginger and lemon tea. The funny parts are way funnier with your narration. I didn't think it would work as well with dramatic books, though. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of an interesting point with audiobooks. I mean, like, I think it works for some of them, but I don't know. It just it requires much more attention that I'm used to giving audio, I guess. With podcast, it never really feels like you need to be like as attentive as you need to do with audiobooks, like because you have to kind of like be encouraging yourself to imagine stuff. I don't know. Is there a chance to have a Spanish version of the book too? I would very much hope so. So we do have trying to remember what edition. We definitely have a French edition of the book. I mean, it's kind of up to the publishers, really. Like, I could just send an email to be like, hey, do you think we can have a Spanish edition? I don't know if it'll have any impact at all, honestly. It would be nice, but I consider myself very lucky to have any editions of Fun Science beyond just the English edition. It's very cool that is a thing at all. So maybe one day, but we'll have to wait and see. Cool. Well, we're about an hour in now, so I can move on to talking about the most recent episode of Fun Science that has been released, which is I mean, if you're willing to help translate it, that might be helpful. We still need to find someone to publish it. That's the thing. But I mean, having said what I just said, probably would be much easier to go to my publisher here in the UK, back in the UK, and say, hey, here is the fully translated Hebrew edition of Fun Science, which includes the Hebrew publisher. Let's get this out. But anyway, what is the power of a hug? This is so yeah. This is the episode of Fun Science. This is going to be the most recent episode of Fun Science for a while. We don't have any more plans to shoot more Fun Science anytime soon. I've got quite a big project coming that's going to kick into gear the start of next year. So I'm leaving myself open to be able to make more Fun Science at some point in the future. I don't quite know when that's going to happen. I will obviously let you guys know through the magic of Patreon. It's not really magic. It's just I'll put a post up and then hopefully you'll see it. I'll be sure to let you guys know. But for now, what is the power of the hug? Is the most is going to be the newest episode of Fun Science for a while, or Serious Science, as I decided to call it. So I think this episode started originally it wasn't going to be about just like the power of a hug. Like I talk a lot about touch generally in this episode, and that is simply because the question of the science of hugs, I couldn't find too much stuff about it on its own. So I did have to do some looking around the topic, like interesting stuff that would kind of like relate to it and helped kind of like inform the stuff about hugs specifically. But if you're paying attention, you'll notice that although I start by talking about hugs, I don't actually get into the science of hugs until 3 minutes into the video, because that's what happened. I didn't want to just kind of posit it as talking about touch on its own, though. I did kind of want to make hugs the focus still. Yeah, that's how that one came together. Emily was trying heavily as well to get me to call the video "Hugs Are Drugs," right? Yeah. I was heavily petitioned by Emily, but ultimately, "What is the power of the hug" was the one that won out. So how did this episode come together? So talking about the two different, we've done a lot of going inside of my brain throughout Fun Science so far, and this is just the most recent iteration of that, to meet the two different parts of how touch works inside of the brain, the kind of more the side that is focused on facts and the side that is just focused on feelings, and how hopefully it came across in the video that you kind of need both of them in order for your sensation of touch to come across. That's just how it works. And then we had a guest star in this video, the lovely Mr. Ben Gordon. He played, the character was called Curious Bob, I think. Curious Bob, curious about whether or not he can tickle himself. We did have someone else set to take on the role of Curious Bob, but they had to drop out at the last minute because I think they had a bit of a medical emergency, if I'm right remembering. They're completely fine now. And so I think we called Ben pretty last minute, and he came in and did the job. If you are Canadian at all, then you might recognize Ben as he used to be the host, or one of the hosts, of the Cineplex pre-show. And he also has made some very, very funny YouTube videos. He does this kind of mini-series around the Toronto International Film Festival called Ben is at the TIFF. You'll find a link to his YouTube channel at the end of the video, and I would recommend going to check his stuff out. Like he's not a big YouTuber by any means, but he is one of my favorites. And he doesn't post that often either. I don't even know if he would really consider himself to be a YouTuber, but I like the videos that he has made. How much time did it take between having the idea of the video until you actually filmed it? I'm trying to remember with this one. What is the power of a hug? I feel like having the idea, 2 weeks, really?
3 weeks?
I feel like it was longer than that. 3 or 4 weeks, something like that. Came up with all of the ideas first, and then kind of went through them to write them in order of what I felt like would be the easiest for me to write. That's usually what I do if I'm looking at, okay, I've got 6 videos of Fun Science to write, 6 different topics, which is the least intimidating one for me to start with. I won't necessarily do them in any kind of, and then I think the order is kind of like dictated by that more than anything else. Other than the one that we released around Halloween, that was kind of like, that was, gonna come out at that time. But sorry, suddenly I'm filling up with mucus. Kind of gross, I know, but sorry. Weird. Is that what happens when you talk a lot? You just sort of get. Anyway, so ultimately, very happy to have Ben Gordon included in the video, and love his beard. I don't know. There's not much more to say about Ben. Just a lovely chap who you should go and give a watch to. Give him a watch this Christmas. if you are interested, so there's the point 3 minutes into this video, what is the power of a hug, where I present while also giving a hug and receiving a hug from my friend Jamie, who came in to be the assistant director on this shoot, which meant that she basically made everything happen on time. Very, very good at that, Jamie, and also very, very good hugger. And I feel like we had to do that. We did that quite a few times. I feel like we got maybe 4 takes, maybe 5 of us just doing long, prolonged hugs. And I remember after seeing that, after that episode came out, my friend Kaylee saw it, and then when I saw her next, she came over here and then just kind of gave her a normal hug to say hello. And then when I was like, okay, that's probably a normal leg for the hug, she just kind of wouldn't let go of me for a little while because she was like, I saw Jamie got a really long hug in your video, and I'm jealous, and I want that. That was the effect of that moment anyway. And then Jamie ended up in the thumbnail as well, simply because she did that kind of like little huggy look. I don't know how to describe it, but anyway. Actually, one example in this video that kind of goes back to what I was talking about previously about how sometimes there's like, here's a big chunk of voiceover in the episode just with graphics to save time. That's usually the thing that comes out. There was a big chunk of voiceover with lots of graphics in it in this section, which is where I'm talking about this experiment that was done looking at kind of people who hug more often and how they seem to have their immune systems tend to be better. All of that stuff. That is one of the sections that, had it not been almost completely vital to this video, that's probably what would have come out in order just to save time. But I think it was that was one of those things where it was like it was vital to talk about how hugs specifically have this impact on can have this impact on our health. And I think I even, like, early on in the video, I said something along the lines of hugs can improve your health, or hugs can stop you from getting sick. And then there is no, basically, that like there are enough other mentions, and it was like vital enough to the through line of the video that I was like, okay, I actually have to make the graphics for this this time. I actually have to put the time in, so that's what I did, and somehow decided it would be worth making 400 little figures appear on screen at the same time. So there you go. Then we have the one of the things that's always nice with fun science is like it's either being able to include photos or video from NASA or very old footage, because that's always the stuff where you're like, okay, I want to make sure I actually have permission to use all of this stuff. And whenever I do a video about space, I always go straight to the NASA website because all of their stuff is it's copyright free and anyone can take it and use it. And in terms of the I talk about the Harlow's monkey experiments, which is about the monkeys deciding whether or not to go with this cloth mother which provides no food, or the wire mother that's less comfy, not as nice to hug, but gives the food, showing that infants kind of like have this kind of natural instinct to want to hug. So it's convenient to be able to use that footage, basically. And then, oh yeah, so I was like, I know this is going to probably be the last episode for a while, so I was like, oh, I should probably end it on some kind of like big moment. that was my instincts, and so I was like, I guess I have to turn into a superhero and fly off into the sky. I don't really know what else to do. So that's what I did. That's why I was like, how do I finish this? Okay, and he turns into Cuddling Charlie, and he's a superhero. He's wearing a costume, and then he flies off into the distance. And I was like, I'll be able to figure out how to do that. Just kind of like, it's very easy to give yourself lots of work to do later when you're writing, to be like, oh, that's a big way to finish stuff off. And I mean, mostly what I remember from this is the fact that we didn't think that for whatever reason, we didn't really have enough time to kind of like get all of the pieces that we felt like we needed on the day, because like in order to have me fly off, right, you need to be able to kind of like have the footage of just the background on its own with no one in it, which we did get. But then you also kind of want to be able to kind of like ideally have like maybe green screen footage of me, kind of like a full body shot of me jumping up in like upwards, so that you could like animate the whole thing. Cloning Charlie. No, this is Cuddling Charlie. Different superheroes, same still just me wearing a silly costume. There you go. I did like that it was like an inadvertent reference to Cloning Charlie, that old superhero costume though. But yeah, we didn't get any kind of like, I was like, okay, if we don't get like green screen footage of me and my whole body to use to kind of like make me jump up, fly off into the sky, then we need to kind of like get like a full body photo, because I could use that to stitch together. We ultimately wouldn't get any of that. And so maybe if you look closely at, like, it's not too easy to see because I had a lot of like motion blur, but if you look closely to the bit where Cuddling Charlie flies off, you might be able to see that like the frame cuts off, like so I'm missing like an arm and I don't have any legs. So I basically found some photos online that were free for me to use of just like some random guy's legs. So I have like a suit, that like a guy wearing a suit, I have his legs and his like fancy shoes, and then I had to stitch on an arm from somewhere else as well. And it was just like I found the photo of like an arm. Like looking back at this now, like the arm is on screen for like 2 frames, but I still felt like I needed to find the photo, stitch it on, and then add the motion blur. And then I added the kind of like the smoke coming out of my butt as well, which is what it looks like to me now. But I think ultimately it works. It worked just fine. But yeah, that's the effort I put into just like a dumb little joke of, okay, he's a superhero now. Although maybe you will notice this, but I did not put too much effort into the bit where I kind of spin around and turn into the superhero. It's a very, very simple effect. I was planning on kind of like doing something much more complicated, where I would like cut out every individual frame of me spinning and then put that onto like the blank background with nothing on it, and then add kind of like a forced motion blur so it looked like I was spinning at like a superhuman speed, and then just sort of like blend those 2 things together. And ultimately I ended up doing like the very, very simple thing, which was just speeding up the footage and basically just plopping a cross dissolve onto it. So just one dissolves into the next. It's very basic, but it looked fine. And I was like, you know what? It kind of looks good. It's like I've done it the cheap and easy way, but I don't think people will mind. I don't know if any of you thought about that at all while you're watching. Just like, oh, he used the simple version of the spinning superhero effect. That doesn't seem right. But that's the stuff that I spend my time thinking about when I'm stressing about putting these videos together. And that's about it for what is the power of a hug. Yeah, man. And that's pretty much all I have to say about all of these fun science videos as well. Was the superhero costume more comfortable than the night one? Most definitely. I mean, it was just like I wasn't wearing any like tights or anything, so I was basically just like wearing a t-shirt. For me, that's what it felt like. I was wearing a t-shirt plus with the mask on top. I couldn't see. I remember that. Well, I don't actually remember it, but I'm just looking at the image of me wearing a superhero costume now, and I'm not wearing any glasses, so I probably couldn't see that well. But didn't matter at the time. Whereas the night one, I don't know, was a little bit tight, and then I had to hold like the shield the whole time, and I had like a sword just like stuck in my belt as well. I mean, they were both basically fine. There's nothing really to complain about, to be honest. But there you go. So yeah, I mean, I don't quite know when it is, like I said, that we'll be making more episodes of Fun Science. I have another video that I might be making before the year is out, but it won't be a fun science one. Haven't quite figured out if that's going to happen yet or not. But what I might do at some point is, either look into that old document of ideas for episodes of Fun Science, or if there's anything that you guys are like, oh, here's something I know vaguely sciencey. Here's a vaguely sciencey thing I know that I'd like to know more about. One thing I should look into more, because it came up in one of the previous live streams, someone talking about these two neutron stars, I believe, that collided. And it's a very important moment in science that I do not know much about at all. And I feel like that might be something I come back to if it still feels relevant, if something else, some other big science moment has happened since then. Then maybe that will become a topic of a video. But I feel like that's probably a good place to start with. Something complicated as well, possibly quantum mechanics. Maybe not. Maybe that's too hard. But who knows? Yeah, I feel like I want to do some complex stuff in the future. So yeah, don't hold your breath for more episodes. I'd say if any do come out, they will be probably happening the next year, probably not too early next year. One thing I didn't really feel like I had a lot of time to do with this round of episodes is I didn't really feel like I had enough. Well, I mean, I'm always going to want more time to write and like finesse and stuff. But yeah, it was hard to do everything in the time frame that we had. Basically, it was full on. So I'd like to try and see if there's a way of giving myself more time to do it. But obviously that might mean like a longer break before episodes come out. So yeah, it's difficult to figure out. Will you do something for Project for Awesome this year? I don't know if I necessarily have time to, unfortunately, this time around. I'm going back to the UK in 2 or 3 weeks, I think, to have Christmas with my family. And that kind of coincides with Project for Awesome. I think the first week I get back, yeah, that will be when Project for Awesome is happening. And then there's this other video that I might be making as well, and I just don't know if we'll see. Essentially, I think I unfortunately am not really. I haven't been able to involve myself in every Project for Awesome every year. So maybe like once every like couple of years, I might get around to making a video, figuring something like that out. Sometimes I'll just appear in the live stream or something like that, do something smaller to try and help out. I would like to do something if I can, even if it is just kind of like making a live stream appearance. Actually, that might be a good thing for me to do, because I know that when they do the live stream, they often have they find it hard to have someone to do the live stream when people in the United States need to be asleep. It's like they have this kind of like blank bit where they need people in the UK awake in the morning, their time, to kind of like fill in that gap. So maybe I'll fill in that gap again this year, as I have done in the past. But yeah. I really hope you continue the Fun Science series. You make everything easier to understand. Well, thank you very much. I would very much like to. I kind of love it as a format, and there's always so much stuff that can be talked about. So yeah, I'd like to do more. But don't be surprised if you don't hear anything from me for a while. It's not because I've given up on it. It's just because I just don't have enough time to focus on Fun Science itself right now. But yeah, I know one thing I need to do before I completely put fun science to bed for the time being is because I've been behind on live streams. So that's, well, in 10 minutes time, then this will be the 3 live streams all in one pop. But I also want to put the time into the further reading post as well. That's been one that would prove to be more work than I had initially expected, to be perfectly honest with you, making those posts. So I'm pretty behind on those at the moment. But I also don't want to rush them out, you know? Like, it's one of those things I don't want to kind of like, yeah, I want to make sure that everything that's in those posts is actually going to be of interest to you. It would be very easy for me to just like do some quick Googles and just like shove stuff together and just, you know, make something that I'm, you know, I want to do it properly is what I'm saying basically. So I guess that's my way of saying sorry that all of the further readings haven't come out yet, but they will be coming out in due course. Hopefully, maybe they'll help to kind of like prolong the fun science experience for you for a little bit longer, as they kind of like eventually come out one by one. So yeah, and then I think that's that will be about it for fun science on Patreon for a while. I don't know if you guys noticed, and maybe maybe he's here in the chat, maybe he's not. There was one guy who did end up buying my the kind of the silly perk that I included. It's kind of on Patreon. That's one thing you have to do every once in a while, is have the silly expensive perk. And I made it silly because if you get the expensive perk of, I think it's $100 per episode of Fun Science, you get a signed banana, a signed plastic banana, and you get your name at the end of every episode as an official banana holder. And someone has actually bought one of those bananas, and so that is in the post on its way to you if you happen to watch this, or if you happen to be here. Banana is en route. That was one of the other things I was like, got to remember to post that banana. You know, for a while I was assuming that the person who bought that perk probably made a mistake, and I was waiting for them to turn around and be like, no, give me a refund. This is not what I wanted. I don't want this plastic banana. But seems like that's what they wanted. So there you go. Cool. Well, we've got 7 minutes left. So once again, if you guys have any more questions, feel free to ask them. We're probably at the point now where maybe I won't bring Gideon to you, but I might see.
He's on the chair.
Gideon is on the chair. Well, maybe we'll just go and see Gideon. Maybe that's how we'll finish stuff off. If you have a question, ask it. I will do my best to answer it, but I don't know if there's any more tidbits I can give you about the episodes. So let's look at a cat instead. Where is he?
On that chair.
Oh, he's on that chair. There he is. Hey, buddy. Come on. It's convenient. It's like having a cat in a drawer or something when he does this. There he is. Kind of an odd angle to look at him, but this is where he is. So there you go. There he is. That's you, Gideon. You're on the internet. Seems pretty chill with it. Do you have any plans as a musician? Not currently. I still the closest I have is I would still like to write a musical at some point. But that's a bit of a pipe dream for me right now. When it comes to just sort of doing regular music, unfortunately, it's not something I'm too into these days, and don't necessarily make the time for it. I'm pretty out of practice, so it's not something I do much of. Is this okay with you, Gideon? People are saying hello. You want to respond? Oh, you're trying to have your nap or something. One of your many, many naps of the day. Yes, indeed. At the end of the day, it's all just cat videos, isn't it? That's what everyone really wants to see. Hey, buddy. Here he is. Oh, God. All right. He's now done with us. He's just like, what is going on? It was actually, I did have someone approach me one day, way back when, and he was talking about possibly turning my life into a musical. I don't think anything ever came of it in the end. I'm not sure I ever kind of like progressed with it, but if I was going to write a musical, I don't necessarily know that I would do that, but I just like the idea of it. Just like the idea of it. You can't see this, but I am now just giving my cat lovely little pets, making him happy. Saying thank you for gracing us with your presence on the internet. Well, that's pretty cute. Hey. There he is. Just ruining a chair. Just ruining a chair. Alrighty. Well, I think we're about done, aren't we, Gideon? Yeah, we're about done. Any final questions you want to throw at me? Or yeah, I'm at a blank for stuff to talk about now. Been going for about an hour and a half. I feel like I've said some stuff multiple times. Fun Science will return, but it might not be for a while. So just be prepared for that. Fun Science will return. It might not be for a while. Well, thank you very much for coming. I think that's the thing to say. Thanks for coming, and thank you for your support on Patreon as well. You know, we've been lucky enough to have some sponsors to help us out with paying for everything. But all of the cash that you guys have been kind enough to send over per episode, you know, even if it's just a small amount on your end, it definitely adds up, and it's definitely doing its job to cover the costs of the whole thing. It's really appreciated. Still, that's Gideon's tale. Yeah, I'm incredibly thankful for all of your support. So thank you so much for it. You're saying I thought you only did it for 5 people. The other live streams have often only been 1 or 2 people. That's why I was so adamant about kind of like, let's commit to a time, let's do it, because I really wanted as many people to be here for the live thing as possible. But I do hope that other people will hopefully go back and watch this as well. Are you excited about the 13th Doctor? Yeah, I am, for sure. I'm always happy when there's hard not to be excited about Doctor Who when it's going through one of those kind of like transitional periods, you know, a new showrunner and new Doctor. You know, it feels like it's going to be a different format in some form as well. And the thing about Doctor Who is that it's, you know, it's one of those shows where you know that even if the essence is the same, it can be an entirely different thing. So I'm always looking forward to seeing the new version. The new Doctor looks great, and I'm excited to see where that goes. There we go. Back to the classics. Let's talk about Doctor Who and cats, shall we? All right. I think I'll stop there. Thank you so much again, everyone, for watching and supporting. And yeah, and unless a Fun Science video suddenly appears for some reason, which I will warn you of, then in terms of Fun Science, I'll probably see you in the new year. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.